The Academy banned blades that morning. Still, Jarek strode in with 6 of them, gleaming with restless light. The alien duelist hailed from a bloodline celebrated for their steel, his forearms bearing curved sabers that thrummed faintly with stored energy. Dozens of species leaned forward in their tiers, antennae quivering, frills flaring, gill plates clicking with anticipation. This was the annual showcase, a trial between disciplines to prove whether brute dominance or mental mastery held greater honor. Xerx picked the human exchange student, assuming it would be swift, for humans were small, their frames brittle, their muscles slight beside towering saurids or crystalline insectoids. Yet the mortal didn't reach for armor, shield, or spear. He calmly placed a notebook on the dueling floor, uncapped a simple pen, and smiled as though about to face nothing harsher than an exam. Unease rippled through the amphitheater. Jarek angled his upper blades in salute, though his lower pair twitched with uncertainty, baffled why this mammal mocked ritual combat with a writing stick. The ritual's master lifted a translucent limb, signaling the match had begun. Jarek lunged, expecting a scramble, a plea, perhaps a frantic dodge. Instead, the human leaned aside by inches and scribbled swiftly across the page. The arena's projector synced, pulsing to life on every student's tablet. A diagram sprawled open, lines converging into vectors, arcs of motion, force curves. The crowd inhaled sharply. The human had mapped Jarek's strikes in real time. Every slash, no matter how vicious, appeared charted, as though rehearsed countless times beforehand. Jarek faltered, blade sparking against safety wards, slicing nothing but air while the diagram redrew itself, anticipating his next swing before he chose it. Laughter rippled among the audience, though uneasy, for realization dawned. The pen wasn't mockery, but a weapon of different breed. The duel became mind versus instinct, calculation against instinct. Jarek feinted left, spun high, carved downward in twin arcs. Yet the human already traced the counterpath, sidestepping a fraction of a breath before impact. Beads of mercury-like sweat slipped down the alien's chitin, while the human's wrist barely quivered, pen scratching faster and faster. Equations unfurled. Parabolic thrust. Momentum bleed. Rotational imbalance. Watching students felt their pride buckle. They saw the truth. This wasn't a contest of skill, but a public dissection of their warrior's craft. The instructor restrained himself from stepping in, though his frills twitched uneasily. Rarely had a duel shifted from honor to exposure so quickly. Yet the human didn't sneer. He lifted the page and even while sliding aside a strike lectured. Here, his pivot drags the torque wide. That leaves openings here, here, and here. His upper grip overextends, leaving this flank bare. It isn't strength. It's leverage. Quills and styluses darted as students recorded, holograms replaying over their slates. Jarek snarled, not in hate, but from the unbearable sting of watching every move explained before it landed. His swings turned wild, but each one gave the mortal fresh data to annotate. Soon the human shifted gears, sketching not only defense but clear counters. Arcs where a single thrust might topple the duelist. He never delivered them, though. He circled instead, measured, as if the arena were nothing but a lecture hall and Jarek a volunteer demonstrator. Clan banners shimmered uneasily above the gallery, whispers weaving through the crowd. "They call humans fragile," murmured a crystalline student. "But what kind of weapon bends reality onto paper like that?" Another whispered. "He isn't fighting him, he's teaching him." The duel had transformed from combat to instruction, and that unnerved even the professors. Jarek's panting lowered 2 blades. His stance faltered. Pride, however, shoved him onward. He launched a blur of thrusts. But the human's pen now flowed in sentences, whole passages scrolling across every display. Not just diagrams, analysis, commentary, directions. Gasps burst from the class as words appeared. Step left and thrust upward. I will leave it open. Jarek froze mid-swing, reading. To obey was to accept mercy. To refuse was to betray fear of the script. His clan blood urged him to strike regardless. Yet his mind whispered, the duel had already been decided. For the first time in the Academy's centuries, a match was not fought but written, each motion transcribed like prose, each feint reshaped into metaphor. The instructors exchanged wary looks, wondering whether to stop it, while the students leaned closer, spellbound. They sensed this was not humiliation, but the birth of a doctrine. The human tapped his pen lightly against the notebook, as if signaling the next chapter. In that stillness, the alien realized the contest was no longer him against his opponent, but tradition against understanding. His blades trembled, hovering above a figure who had yet to lift even a finger in attack. The crowd held its breath, silence thick as stone, waiting to see whether Jarek would strike again, or whether the mortal's words had already stripped the fight from him. The pause stretched too long, tails flicking, wings rustling, mandibles grinding. Xerxes' limbs shook, not merely from strain, but from the unbearable exposure of being dissected before every eye. Generations of dueling glory, a dynasty sung across half a dozen systems, pressed like a weight upon his back. Still, the mortal remained serene, pen hovering, ready to capture motion and turn it into meaning. The tension finally shattered when Jarek roared and launched forward, all 4 blades flashing in a storm. Sparks sprayed against the arena shields. The human didn't recoil. His pen looped a curve across the page, and the projection bloomed into a spiral. The audience gasped as the spiral became a simulation, every strike looping back, each motion twisting upon itself until the alien's arms knotted and his momentum collapsed. He stumbled, nearly sprawling. The laughter that followed was not cruel, but awed, the nervous release of seeing a vessel thread impossible asteroids unscathed. The mortal spoke at last, eyes still on the paper. Combat is language. He shouts in fury. Translate. The words reverberated, amplified across the hall. Quills scraped, tablets lit, jaws tightened. The claim stunned them. That battle could be written, read, understood. Panting, eyes aflame with shame, Jarek tried a new angle. He feigned retreat, circling fast, his speed almost beyond vision. Yet every dash left a trail on the hologram, mapped seconds in advance. The pen darted, recording not just movement but intent. Text pulsed across the display. He will flank right. Counter is 1 step. When Jarek struck from that very arc, the human shifted exactly as written, untouched. A murmur swelled, sharper now. For centuries the Academy taught no being could see intent so clearly, that only instincts tempered by ages of combat could glimpse such foresight. Yet here was a newcomer sketching predictions like idle doodles. Whispers rose. If humans can do this, what else might they turn into equations? Another voice quivered. Does this mean any warrior art can be dismantled with ink? The teacher bristled, frills twitching, for they understood the threat beneath those whispers. Supremacy itself was being questioned, but the human did not gloat. His tone stayed measured, almost kind, as if tutoring a peer. Strength wasted without direction. Fury without shape is noise. Precision requires thought. Jarek, stung, hurled his final gamble. All 4 blades shot outward, arcing on auto-return, a technique forbidden for its danger. Gasps cut through the crowd. The weapons spun like 4 suns, closing in from every side. Yet the page was already alive. Rings layered outward, arrows curving, annotations flowing like geometric verse. The projection showed their return paths crossing into a knot. Before impact, steel clashed against steel midair, collapsing into a rain of broken fragments. Silence roared through the hall. 4 weapons, treasures of a warrior clan, lay ruined on the floor. Jarek froze, his body quaking. He had not been struck by muscle or scarred by steel. He had been defeated by diagrams that exposed the flaws of his entire discipline. Still, the human claimed no triumph. Instead, he raised the notebook for all to see. The duel is not against him. It is against the belief that strength is everything. Knowledge, foresight, clarity. These are weapons no shield can bar. His words rolled like thunder across the students. Some cheered, others hissed denial, yet all were spellbound. For the first time, a duel had shifted into a lecture, and the lecture into revelation. Jarek's pride buckled. He sank to one knee, not in surrender, but because his body collapsed under the realization. He had not been bested as weak, but as predictable. The human lowered his pen, crouched close, and spoke softly so only Jarek heard. "I never meant to shame you. But often we learn most when our pride is opened. This is not your end." It was the beginning of a new way of seeing. The alien's mandibles clicked, a sound caught between despair and reverence. Around them, uproar erupted. Students shouted, instructors argued, the amphitheater alive with chaos. The academy had rules, but none accounted for a triumph earned through words instead of blades. At last, an elder instructor with silver-tipped antennae rose, her voice steady yet strained. "Enough. The duel is finished." But even as she declared it, her gaze lingered on the human's notebook, as though in its pages lay both threat and promise. Word would soon travel beyond the academy, through fleets and systems, of the day ink humbled a blade master. And in the restless silence that followed, all sensed this was not the end of a contest, but the spark of something far larger, a fracture that would spread across civilization like cracks in glass. The human snapped his notebook closed, though his pen remained poised, as if the true struggle had only begun. The amphitheater roared long after the fallen blades stilled. Students debated furiously, voices colliding in a dozen dialects, wings fluttering, tails whipping, claws drumming. For generations, the Academy's duels had been spectacles of raw power, honor measured by blood and steel. Yet tradition had been overturned before their eyes. No strike landed, no wound carved, yet the verdict was undeniable. The mortal had prevailed. Instructors tried to restore order, but the air crackled too hot. Some demanded disqualification, insisting no true duel had been fought. Others argued it had been the most brilliant in centuries. For what greater victory than to triumph without violence? Through it all, the human remained still, notebook closed, pen loose in hand. He waited, certain the storm would fade, leaving silence where truth could echo. At last, the head instructor descended, her crystalline robe scattering light into rainbow shards. Her voice cut the noise to stillness. "The duel is over, but its meaning is not. The Academy must decide what has been revealed here." Her ancient eyes fixed on the mortal. "Human, what have you shown us?" The student's voice was low, but every ear strained to catch it. "That knowledge is not lesser than strength. That foresight is a sharper blade than steel. That combat, like language, can be read, written, and rewritten. And that a pen, simple as it seems, can end a battle before it begins." The words struck deeper than weapons. They resonated in ways the students could not yet name, but would remember long after the duel. Some trembled in fear. Others felt liberated. Jarek, still kneeling, lifted his head and rasped, "Then teach me. If I cannot defeat you, I must learn from you." Gasps filled the hall. A duelist of such lineage, bowing to an outsider, was unthinkable. Yet his sincerity silenced mockery. The human reached out, hand extended. Jarek clasped it with 2 arms. In that moment, the duel became something else. Not dominance, but the seed of a partnership. In the days that followed, elders argued fiercely. Some feared the method would render warriors obsolete. Others saw hope, that conflicts might be solved with ink before blood. The tale spread swiftly, carried by messengers, whispered in markets, echoed in command halls. Admirals demanded reports of how a human bested a master duelist without raising a weapon. Scholars begged to study the diagrams. Strategists dreaded the implications for war. Soon, invitations poured in, summoning the human to lecture at councils, academies, even planetary defenses. Wherever he went, he boasted nothing. He carried the same notebook and pen, teaching that combat was narrative, that strength without thought was hollow, and that humans, fragile though they seemed, were dangerous because they turned every battlefield into a classroom. Other students followed his path, not only Jarek but many species who had witnessed the duel. They began sketching during practice, analyzing instead of striking. Some resisted, clinging to custom, but slowly the academy shifted. New lessons emerged. Duels combined intellect and force. At the heart of it, the story of pen and blade grew into legend. Jarek changed most of all. Once brash, he tempered strength with insight. He fought still, but now with foresight to match ferocity. He and the human became unlikely allies. The duelist with 4 arms, the mortal with a pen, together redefining combat. The legend spread further. On distant worlds, alien children scribbled diagrams, dueling imagined foes. On starships, officers argued strategies over chalkboards, sketching equations beside star maps. And always at the center of those stories was the human who proved the greatest victories were written, not fought. Years later, when he graduated, the academy gathered once more in the same amphitheater. This time no duel, only unity. Students of every kind stood with pens and styluses raised. The head instructor spoke, blades cut the body, words cut deeper. Today we honor not the end of tradition, but its evolution. May this academy remember that the smallest tool, in the right hands, may change the galaxy. The human stood humbled, smiling at the sight of thousands raising pens like swords. Not because he had once won a duel, but because he had planted an idea that would endure. Jarek stood beside him, placing a blade into the human's hand. Not for battle, he said, but for memory. So your pen and my blade will stand together. The mortal lifted both, pen and steel, high to the crowd. The amphitheater thundered with voices united. Not the cheer of conquest, but recognition that a fragile-seeming human had proven the sharpest edge lay not in steel, but in thought. And thus the duel of ink and blades ended not in defeat, but in a galaxy transformed.